Several Northeast Florida counties experienced a low voter turnout in August's primary election, but for Florida, Clay County's supervisor of elections, it appears to have been a last straw. Here to discuss his reaction and what he hopes a recent letter that he wrote accomplishes is Clay County supervisor of elections, Chris Chambless. Hey, Chris.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm glad to have you here. So, this was a rather scathing letter to voters that you wrote. Tell us what it said first and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Well, it was all in love. Of course, everything that we do for ensuring that citizens of Clay County have fair, equitable, transparent elections. But in addition to that, we hope that they will take advantage of that process. And what concerned me was it was a low water mark in the past 20 years for a turnout in a presidential year primary of 19%.
19%. So that is 80% of people just chose not to participate. That's of registered voters,
That's correct.
not just the general population.
That's correct.
Um, so you were frustrated by this. Talk about where that frustration comes from. Is it primarily because you're concerned about the lack of participation? Is it the resources that are expended and wasted preparing for something like this?
All of the above. Of course, there is a fiscal side to this, as I mentioned in the article. Just election worker payroll. That's not my staff. It's just the election workers. Election workers are paid. That was $250,000 for a primary election. And while we don't want to focus on the dollar amount or a cost per vote, what we do want to say is the amount of effort that goes in to an election that was a very lackluster turnout. If you think about it this way, think about it as an Olympian who all their life prepare for that day. And they train and train and they show up to the Olympics and nobody comes to watch. Or the Super Bowl, to where you have struggled the whole year through the playoffs to make it to the Super Bowl, and you look in the stands and nobody is there but your family. And that's what I equate it to. And I don't think, yes, I know that we live in a republic, but it's a democratic process to provide the leadership in that republic. And if nobody shows up, or if very few people show up, then you have a small number of individuals that are placing the laws on the books or are placing the candidates in office, and that needs to change.
So in your letter, you called it appalling, and you said that's especially so given the availability of 45 days of vote by mail, 10 days of early voting, in addition to all of the hours that are 12 hours on a primary day as well. What do you think is happening? Why do you think that that voter turnout was so poor on August 20th?
Well, I think that we have become the two sides. Number one, we've become as a nation apathetic. My vote doesn't mean anything. It won't make a change and whatnot. And that was one of the wonderful election cartoon that I placed in my article. That said that my vote doesn't count. Well, the truth of the matter is the only vote that does not count is the one that's not placed. Now, the individual who you wanted to win may or may not have won, but your voice was heard, and your voice will always be heard as long as you engage into the process. But too many times we have individuals that relate whether or not their candidate wins to whether the election or their vote counted, and that is a myth that we really need to dispel.
Apathy is one thing you're saying.
Okay, so apathy is the first thing. The other thing is I think that individuals, we live busy lives. Many individuals may work multiple jobs to make ends meet, and they say, look, if it doesn't directly affect me, then I'm just going to go on with my day in living. But the truth of the matter is ultimately, whether it's a tax that you don't agree with, whether it's a decision that your representative makes that they don't agree with, ultimately it will impact them. Oftentimes, individuals will say, well, I didn't get to vote on this, but in fact, that they did get to vote. They did if they participated in the election for the position that the individual that made those decisions. And that's why it's very important. There are individuals that have given their life so that you can have the freedom to cast your ballot. And if you don't take advantage of that, then you're saying that ultimately that it didn't matter.
So you say apathy, and at the same time, it seems like people are more political than ever in terms of their engagement, whether it's on social media or, talking about it publicly. I feel like we hear more about politics than we care to on a good day. Um, how does that interplay with what you're saying is voter apathy?
Well, I think it goes back to if it doesn't go your way, or if it's not ran the way that you believe, then you equate that to your voice doesn't matter. But it does, and so they sit at home. Think about this. So, just in my years that I've worked as with the elections office, we now have early voting, and early voting goes for up to 2 weeks of this coming general election in Clay County. 144 hours of early voting. In addition to that, we have voting by mail. No excuse. You used to have an excuse. I'm out of town, sign an affidavit, and now you can vote by mail just because that's what you want to do. So all of these laws have made change to make it easier for you to cast your ballot, but yet it did not help.
Got a few calls I want to take. Daryl from St. Augustine, just briefly go ahead, please. Daryl, thanks.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, I think you're moving in the right direction, making it easier. But if I can go on the computer and in 5 minutes transfer thousands of dollars from one location to another, there's absolutely no reason that I can't go on the computer and have my vote counted. I can do that. I can transfer money in 5 minutes. I should be able to vote in less than that. You should. I mean, you shouldn't have to get in a car, go place, sign something up, do documents, go online. This is who I am. Boom, confirm it.
Daryl, thanks. So what about online voting?
So many, many years ago, I was a part of the secure electronic registration voting experiment that we were going to use for the DOD. And what we found is while there is a way to secure the vote, there is not necessarily a way for you to ensure that the individual who is voting is in fact that individual. And so I think we're a long ways from voting online.
Just a quick call from Tim in Clay County. Tim, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I called, I think it was a week or two ago, and asked a question about the Duval County elections official, and I asked him about the 2020 election, and he gave us an answer of, well, he wasn't sure because it was kind of iffy and shadowy and blah, blah, blah. So I assumed that from that answer that he didn't really believe in the 2020 election. So I was wondering how you felt about it, and if you don't believe that it was a legitimate election, then how could we possibly believe that, I don't know, even the election in Clay County was
Tim,
legitimate?
thank you. Go ahead, just briefly.
So real quick, I've been with the office since 2000, and the systems that conduct the elections are very, very accurate. In 2000, we had a difference of 2 votes, which came down to a marking error on that. So I believe our election systems are very, very accurate.
And you believe the 2020 election was legitimate?
Absolutely.
All right. Chris Chambless, thanks so much for being here. Hopefully your letter has some impact.
Thank you.